introduce Chad Conine. Chad's a Waco native and a Texas Tech graduate, also a former Waco Tribune Herald sports writer who got out while the getting was good. He got out to become a freelance writer and author. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think he just kind of walked into the newsroom and said, "I'm going to go play golf," and he never came back.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think
More or
right.
less.
Yeah. Anyway, he's written 3 books, and along the way in his freelance career, he founded a foodie website and blog called Waco Fork, and he's responsible for recruiting El Gordos and Pokios to provide today's culinary highlights. So you're welcome.
So everybody can, I'll hurry up so everybody can have lunch.
Let's see. His books, his first book, written on that long golf hiatus, it's called In the Burn, and it's sort of a love story to St. Andrews, written more or less from a bar stool in the Dunvegan Hotel.
Pretty much, yeah.
Just off the 18th at the Old Course in St. Andrews. And his latest book is called Texas Sports, Unforgettable Stories for Every Day of the Year. It's a day book of interesting stories from Texas's sports history. One day for one story for every day of the year. And that is due out in September. But we're really here to talk about the Republic of Football. That's his 2016 book. Was featured at the Texas Book Festival, and it's filled with some great stories about the beginnings and the endings of some great high school football careers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad Conine.
Thanks, Kim. Kim, when he was sports editor of the Waco Trib, hired me here in Waco, so forever grateful for bringing me back from my hiatus to Lubbock and Fort Worth. I'm sorry? Oh, at the podium? Okay. I didn't get my stage direction yet. Thanks for coming, everybody, by the way. I wanted to talk about, I've talked about Republic of Football several times now at events like this, and it's really fun to talk about. And each town I go to, I like to cater it sort of. I talked about Drew Brees when I was at the Texas Book Festival in Austin, and about Case Keenum when I was at the West Texas Book Festival in Abilene. And so naturally today I want to talk about LaDainian Tomlinson because obviously he's from Waco University, not only because of that, but because I was a year ahead of him in school. I was at Waco Midway, graduated in 96, and he was at university and graduated in 97. And my friend Tim here, my best friend since we were 3 years old, he ran against LaDainian in high school, and they actually both ran in the state track meet in 1996 on prom night, actually. Going back to those days is kind of what I wanted to start out talking about today, because everybody, probably everybody in here goes to a lot of ball games, and especially with football season coming up, that you circle certain dates on the calendar. When your team is playing the University of Texas or playing Oklahoma or whatever, you think, okay, October 3rd, that's where I'm going to be that day, and it's going to be a big game. As it comes closer, maybe it becomes a bigger game, and you get really excited about going to those. And that's one kind of ball game that you go to. But the ones that I really like are the ball games that you just go to on a random Tuesday night where you see something that's kind of amazing. I've always gone to a lot of ball games. When I was in high school, I would just blow off group projects for English class just to go to a basketball game, down the hall instead. And so it was during that time that I would go watch university specifically. They used to have the Optimist Club basketball tournament in town, and university would obviously play in that always, and so I'd go to that, or and my senior year, I knew a couple of guys that were on the basketball team, David Hudson and Trey Lloyd, because they'd gone to middle school at Midway. And so I would go watch them play specifically, but there was another guy on their team named Lawrence Pullen, and Lawrence Pullen was basically Waco's Spud Webb. He was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, and he could get, I'm telling you, he'd get a foot over the rim and dunk it, and he was a great basketball player. I'd show up just in time for pregame just to watch him dunk in pregame, and he was running back our senior year at university. He was a starting running back, and the fullback and his backup was a guy named LaDainian Tomlinson, and who happens to be going in the Pro Football Hall of Fame next month. So people ask me, like I was on a plane back from Oregon. My mom and dad are here, and my dad and I went and played golf in Oregon this week, and I was on the plane ride back and talking to a couple beside me, and I guess just the self-promoter in me just started talking about my book. I don't know how it came up, but they asked me what my favorite interview to do was, and every time somebody asks me about that, I go back to my interview with LaDainian Tomlinson. Not only because he's arguably the biggest star that I interviewed for the entire book, but also because after I said hi and we sat down and we started talking about Lawrence Pullen and Trey Lloyd and guys that we knew growing up. It was just like two guys from the same town just talking about stuff. It wasn't like just some lowly sports writer and the biggest star in the NFL from 2000 to 2010. It was just two dudes talking in a Starbucks, and actually nobody even came up to us and bothered us. So that's how low profile LaDainian can be if he wants to be at times. Anyway, so that was a really fun interview to do, and one of the things when we got down to business talking about his high school career, we talked about how being the backup his junior year really motivated him when he got his chance as a senior. And that's the segment that I wanted to read, deals a lot with that. And it's short segments, and if reading at book festivals over the last 10 months has taught me anything, it's to read very short segments. So I'm going to read a couple of short segments from it. They're longer than I want them to be, but anyway. And this is the beginning of the LaDainian Tomlinson chapter, by the way. We need to get water bottles for the authors next year.
I'm taking notes.
Right, good. When LaDainian Tomlinson walked onto the field for pregame before the first game of his senior season at Waco University High School, he didn't know what to expect. All he knew was he had put in the work to be ready. He had spent his junior season mostly blocking from the fullback position. When he learned he would take over at tailback as a senior, he went to work doing everything he could to be in shape for those tough carries in the fourth quarter. At 17, he was already outworking people, but he was still plenty nervous. Keep in mind, this wasn't the player who led the NCAA in rushing for 2 straight seasons and won the Doak Walker Award as a TCU senior. He was still miles and miles away from being the best running back in the NFL for most of a decade. In fact, on September 5th, 1996, the 17-year-old Tomlinson stared straight ahead at his first game as the go-to running back on his high school team. As the University Trojans prepared to meet the Austin LBJ Jaguars on a Thursday night at Nelson Field in Austin, Tomlinson experienced one of those here-we-go moments. "This game is fresh in my mind like it was yesterday," Tomlinson said. "The guys on their team, these were big guys. We couldn't just push them around. They had some guys that looked like D1 type guys, top-level college prospects. Kind of looking back, walking on the field, I was thinking to myself, you're going to find out a lot about yourself today. Either you have it or you don't." And I'll skip ahead. By the way, he scored 4 touchdowns rushing, and then this next part. For Tomlinson, the desire to run with the ball began as a 6-year-old. He watched Walter Payton play for the Bears, so when he went out for Pop Warner football, that's what he wanted to do. When I first started playing, the coach put me at quarterback, Tomlinson said. I was pissed about it because I wanted to be a running back. He said, "No, you're going to always run with the football." But I didn't understand. I was thinking, "What are you talking about? I'm going to give it to my friend." He said, "No, I want you to run it." So the first play, I go around the left side for a touchdown. Tomlinson scoring touchdowns would become a trend for the next 25 years. He scored 100 touchdowns in fewer games than anyone in NFL history, making the 100th, 101st, and 102nd touchdown of his career in 2006 in just his 89th game. At the age of 27, that same season, Tomlinson posted 2,323 rushing yards and 31 touchdowns for the San Diego Chargers. But sitting in a Starbucks in Keller, I could sense how Tomlinson had felt before all those achievements came rolling in. He was nervous because he really wanted to prove what he could do, Pullen said when I spoke with him on the phone later that same day. People wondered about him if he could do it when he got his chance. I knew his dedication and his work ethic, and I knew he was going to match that and beyond. I could see the maturation process developing. I felt like he could stand alone. Tomlinson ended up scoring 5 rushing touchdowns. Oh, I was one off. Tomlinson ended up scoring 5 rushing touchdowns in that first game of his senior year. The icing on the cake came in the second quarter when he went back into the game at linebacker. One of my buddies, David Beverly, tells the story because they had taken me out of the game, Tomlinson said. It was over, so I'm on the bench and he has a cramp. He's supposed to be playing that spot. The very next play I go in and I intercept the ball and run it back for a touchdown. Tomlinson can't help but laugh hysterically when telling the story, especially the part about the anguish on Beverly's face. He was like,